What's up YouTube, it's JackalGoldKick, and in this video I want to talk about something that it's kind of been on my mind and I want to discuss it because recently I've been watching a lot of Gamer Rant. He changed his name to Writer and Gamer, but that's what I used to call him with his old name, and it kind of inspired me to do a video like this because he's a YouTuber that talks about negative aspects and negative controversies in gaming, and I want to talk about it myself as well. I feel like talking about it, so I sort of got inspired from his videos to talk about it, and I want to talk about it in this video. So this video is going to be basically about why you shouldn't support Halo Infinite. So, you know, there's a lot of this Halo Infinite controversy right now, if you haven't heard of it. So basically what's happening with Halo Infinite is this is a game coming out. It's going to be missing, there's not going to be co-op or Forge at launch. It's going to be added later on. Now I want to make it clear, I'm not a fan of Halo. It's not a series I follow or like, but I'm still going to speak about this because what they're doing with Halo Infinite and what this is going to do to the industry is detrimental. You know, it's going to be detrimental to gaming itself. So this goes beyond just fans of franchise stuff. You know, I got to talk about this just because it's detrimental to gaming. You know, this is a big problem, and I want to discuss it, and I want to offer this perspective. But yeah, Halo Infinite is a game that's coming out. It's not going to have co-op or Forge at launch. It's going to be added later on. And this is a problem. You know, this is yet again another game being released incomplete, not being released complete at launch. And the game's already split up. You got the multiplayer that's free to play, and then the campaign by itself for $60. When the old Halo games and many other games in the past used to have campaign, multiplayer, and mini modes together released as a complete product. But this is where we are in the industry now, man, and it really sucks to see where the video game industry is headed because, you know, the era I grew up in, it was just way better. You know, games like Resident Evil 4, The Warriors, GTA San Andreas on the PlayStation 2, go back even older, Banjo-Kazooie on the N64, you know, stuff like that. Those kind of games that I played growing up, they were complete. They had no patches, they had no updates, no DLC, no microtransactions. They were complete games, and they worked, and they were playable. And it's what it should have stayed like, because video games are an art form. They're supposed to be complete when it comes to you. There should be no such thing as an update. There should be no such thing as DLC or microtransactions or any of this shit. There should be none of that shit that should exist in gaming, you know? Because the biggest problem with DLC and microtransactions and updates is all it does is it just makes video games incomplete and broken. That's the problem, you know? DLC, patches, updates, microtransactions, all this stuff does is it just makes video games incomplete and broken. You know, that's all it does, and it's unacceptable because video games are supposed to be an art form, you know? I mean, I'll give you an example. The recent game I've been playing a lot is this, Dynasty Warriors 6 on the 360. Now granted, the 360 and PS3 generation, that's when a lot of this bullshit started, but Dynasty Warriors 6 kind of came out in the early years. So the early years of the 7th gen, they didn't really have this stuff until a little bit later on, but Dynasty Warriors 6, that's a perfect example of a game that I've been playing that it's complete, it's playable, there's no DLC, there's no microtransactions, and there's no updates for the game either. It's a complete game, you know? But it's not like that anymore. Nowadays, it's completely different in the gaming industry. Now, they just release a game incomplete with DLC and microtransactions and updates, day one updates. It's unacceptable. It's unacceptable because video games are supposed to be an art form. They're supposed to be complete, you know, and they're being released incomplete and broken, and this is just bullshit, you know. And another problem with the way they do things is future generations are going to get the worst of it. I feel bad for future generations that are going to be born after us, you know, because a lot of these video games, you know, in the 7th generation, the 8th generation, and the 9th generation we're in now, the PS5 and Series X, all these fucking games with DLC and patches and updates and microtransactions, they're all going to be incomplete and broken one day once the servers go down, because it'll stop supporting all those games, which means the DLC will go away, the microtransactions will go away, and you won't be able to get the updates anymore. Therefore, all of those games are going to be released incomplete and broken. And not every game gets a complete edition or a Game of the Year edition, so that's not the solution either. And that shouldn't even need to be a solution if they would do their fucking job and release the game right in the first place and make sure the goddamn thing is fucking complete. This is not how the industry should be treated. Video games are a goddamn art form. Just like books, just like movies, just like TV shows, just like music, you know, just like comic books. All those other industries, when you buy a book or when you buy music or movies or anything like that, they're all complete art forms. I'll give you an example. One of my favorite artists is JB. I bought an album from him, I think last year or the year before, and the entire project was complete. All the songs were on there. It was a complete project. There was nothing missing. There was no songs that were short. It was a complete project. And that's how it should be, because it's an art form. And yet video games are not like that anymore. Video games are treated more like a product rather than an art form, you know? All these game companies have lost sight that video games are an art form and should be treated as such. They're so hungry for money and greed that they don't even treat games like an art form anymore. And it's just sad to see where the industry is. And not only are video games released incomplete and broken, but there's also a lack of creativity. So not only do you have all this bullshit in the industry, but even the games themselves are getting worse in quality. You have a lot of copycats. You have a lot of remakes and remasters relying on the past because they can't make anything new that's as good as the old games. And you have a lot of milked franchises that just keep doing the same thing over and over. So there's just so many problems in the industry, but by far the biggest problem is DLC patches and that kind of shit. And I know I haven't gotten to the topic of Halo Infinite, but I wanted to talk about that stuff so I could sort of, you know, put the perspective of why, you know, DLC and patches are a bad thing. But, you know, so sorry for that kind of long tangent, but to the point of the video, why you shouldn't support Halo Infinite. Well, I'm going to get into that. Halo Infinite, like I said, it's a game that's coming out. It's not going to have co-op or Forge at launch. They're going to add it later on, you know. And it's another one of these live service games that's going to be incomplete, and they're going to just add the rest later, which is unacceptable. And this is just a domino effect. So, you know, this is just a result of something else that happened in the industry. What started all this bullshit with live service, all this stuff that Halo Infinite's doing, because the developers of Halo Infinite, from what I read, apparently they said co-op was supposed to be in there. So they basically lied, and now it's not going to be in there, which is very similar to the No Man's Sky stuff. All this shit happening with Halo Infinite started with No Man's Sky. No Man's Sky was a video game that, you know, the developers promised all of this stuff was going to be in No Man's Sky, and when the game came out, it didn't have any of the features that they said were going to be in it. So they lied to the customers, and then when there was pushback for their lies, they stayed silent about it. And then I think they eventually added it through updates. And then, you know, that game was, despite that stuff, the game was accepted. And because it was accepted, it had a domino effect in the industry. All these other developers looked at No Man's Sky and the developers, and they were like, they let this indie developer get away with it. They let this game get away with it. Why can't we do it too? And what happened? Now you have Fallout 76. Now you have Anthem. I'll even throw Dynasty Warriors 9 there, in my opinion, because I feel like that's kind of a in the same category, because it's a game that was released broken, needed shit tons of patches. It was missing shit. It had so much fucking DLC, 3 season passes. I don't know if Dynasty Warriors 9 is the same kind of thing, but it's still bullshit. But I kind of throw it in there. I could be wrong on it being similar. I don't know, but yeah, No Man's Sky was the reason for this stuff. You know, No Man's Sky was the reason for this stuff. It was accepted. And I've often heard some people literally sit there and say, man, No Man's Sky is so much better now. It's a good game now because they fix it with updates. And it's like, why are you praising it? Why are you applauding it? Why is this a positive thing? You know, they were obligated to do updates because they didn't get the game right in the first place. That doesn't deserve applause. That's not something that should be praised. Because what you're basically telling these developers and the entire gaming industry and all the companies is, hey, I am okay with a game being released half-assed, just, you know, release the rest later, and I'll be happy with it. That's basically what you're telling them. And that's why we're in the state we are now. You know, No Man's Sky was accepted, and now you have the domino effect. And Halo Infinite is a perfect example of this, you know. Halo Infinite's following the same thing. They're lying just like the developers did of No Man's Sky, and there's not going to be features at launch, you know. And what really makes me sick to my stomach is a lot of people have defended this Halo Infinite stuff. A lot of people have like defended the Halo Infinite stuff. You know, they've said stuff like, it's not a big deal, they're going to add co-op and Forge later on, or I don't care about those modes. But the reality of this whole thing is this: it doesn't matter what you think, or it doesn't matter if you want to defend it, or if you don't want to agree with what I have to say, but facts are facts, and you cannot argue with facts. Facts don't care about feelings, and the reality of the situation is, and you can't argue with facts, the reality of it and the facts of Halo Infinite is this: that game is going to be incomplete or possibly broken for years to come one day. It does not matter if they're going to add co-op and Forge at a later date, because it should have been there in the first place. Halo Infinite is a game that's being released incomplete, and it's missing shit. And it does not matter if they're going to add it later on, because you need to get online and have servers to get the updates to have that in the game. Eventually the servers will go down, and Halo Infinite for years to come will be an incomplete game. It's going to be an incomplete game for years to come. And tell me how that's acceptable. Tell me why some of you people defend this shit. Why are you okay with this shit? Why do you defend it? Do you not realize that a game like Halo Infinite, having, you know, missing modes and needing more content through updates rather than they actually releasing complete, means that game is going to be incomplete for years to come once the servers go down? And what it also means, like I said about DLC and patches, what it also means for Halo Infinite is, you know, future generations after us, they're not going to be able to get a complete experience from Halo Infinite. They're not even going to be able to play Halo Infinite complete, you know? And it's just bullshit, because I grew up on games. Many of other people out there, they grew up on games that were released complete and they worked, you know? And why shouldn't the future generations after us, why shouldn't they get that same experience? It's bullshit, you know? It's fucking bullshit. So the reality of Halo Infinite is that game is going to be incomplete for years to come. You know, it doesn't matter how many updates they do, it doesn't matter what they do to this game. If they're going to release it this year, it's going to be released incomplete and broken. You know, and the game is just going to be incomplete one day. That's why this is not acceptable, and that's why it doesn't matter if they fix it with updates, because it never should have happened in the first place. They should have did their job right in the first place and actually released the game complete. You know, and like I said, some of you people that defend this Halo Infinite shit, just ask yourselves that. You know, are you really okay with a game being released incomplete when future generations after you are not going to be able to get a complete experience? You know, that's a real problem. I mean, think about some of the most beloved games out there: Metal Gear Solid, Silent Hill, the old Resident Evils, Kingdom Hearts, all the Final Fantasy games, Resident Evil 4, many more out there. Think about all those beloved games from the old consoles and how many people cherish those games. Imagine if those games were released broken and incomplete. We would have never been able to experience them nowadays. We would have never been able to. Just think about that for a minute. Think about if all those old consoles, think about if PS2, PS1, and 64, just think about for a minute, what if those consoles had servers and patches, updates, DLC? Do you really think that if those consoles were released incomplete and broken and had all the bullshit that we have nowadays, would you be able to play any of those games nowadays? You wouldn't be able to. And that's the reality of what's going to happen to all these games. All these games in 7th, 8th, 9th generation that are released incomplete with patches and that are released with DLC, they're going to be incomplete and broken, or they're going to be one or the other. And that's not acceptable, because video games are an art form. They should be released complete, you know? It should not be treated this way, and that's what's going to happen to Halo Infinite. It's going to be released incomplete, you know? It doesn't matter if they add the updates later. So, you know, this is why you shouldn't support Halo Infinite. It's because of what Halo Infinite is doing, you know? Because a lot of these people I see that are talking about the issues with Halo Infinite, they still say that they're going to support the game or buy it. And this is the reality of it with Halo Infinite. If you don't like what they're doing with Halo Infinite, and you don't like the problems this game has, boycott the game, vote with your wallet, and don't support it. And send a message to them, and send a message to the rest of the industry that this is not acceptable. Because if you support Halo Infinite and you buy this game, you're just telling them you're okay with it. And you're telling the entire game industry that this is okay to do. And you're going to see more and more and more and more of this shit, you know? And I feel like some gamers just don't grasp that concept. They just don't grasp the concept that, you know, boycotting is how we move things forward. We have to boycott these games with these problems, or else we're going to keep having these problems. I'll give you an example. Dead Rising 4 was a game that, you know, most Dead Rising fans hated. It was a game that also tried to sell overtime mode as DLC, which was bullshit because that's always been a feature in the games. And guess what happened? Dead Rising 4 sold poorly. It was a failure. And guess what happened? Capcom shut down the people that made Dead Rising 4 because the game wasn't supported. Thus, Dead Rising did not go in that direction. Why? Because people voted with their wallet and didn't support the game. And the same thing would happen with Halo Infinite. If people would not support these games, these things would not happen. So my message is this. Why you shouldn't support Halo Infinite? It's because if you support Halo Infinite and you accept what this game is doing, it's just going to continue a domino effect of more and more incomplete games and more incomplete art forms, which is what video games are supposed to be. And if you support this game, you're telling 343 and you're telling all these developers that you're okay with this and you should do more of this. And it's just going to keep going and keep going. So if you want to see a change, if you want to see this to go away, if you want to see this stop, boycott the game and don't support it. That's all I have to say about it, you know. So yeah, that's all I have to say about it. I'm sorry it took me so long to kind of get my point across, but you know, this is my first time kind of doing this type of video. But yeah, that's my message, guys. Don't support Halo Infinite if you don't like the problems it has. You know, like I said, Halo Infinite is a game that's being released incomplete. You know, Co-op and Forge are not going to be in the game, and most likely the game's going to have microtransactions because of how the industry is and the fact that the multiplayer is free to play. So, you know, this is yet again another game treated like live service. So that's really all I got to say about it. Like I said, guys, the point of the video is this. Why you shouldn't support Halo Infinite is because it's another one of these games that's being released incomplete. You know, like we've seen time and time again. It started with No Man's Sky. You know, this is just a part of all the problems in the industry and just the domino effect of it. And if you don't want this stuff in the industry, you have to boycott it and you have to vote with your wallet. That's the only way we see a change. And I feel like some people just don't realize that, because I've seen comments and plenty of people before talk about how they're tired of the bullshit in the industry. They hate what's going on. You know, I even seen one guy say, how many cyberpunks is it going to take until companies realize they should stop releasing incomplete, broken games and this and that? And it's like, no. How many cyberpunks or Halo Infinite is it going to take until a lot of you gamers out there realize that you shouldn't support this shit? Because if you don't support it, we wouldn't have this problem in the first place. That's the reality of it. You know, it's the games like Cyberpunk and Fallout 76 and No Man's Sky and Halo Infinite. All these games that are not treated like an art form, that are released incomplete and broken. They're not going to be a complete experience for future generations after us. You know, they are real problems in the industry. And the only way to get rid of these problems is we have to vote with our wallets. We have to boycott it. So if you're one of those people that don't like what Halo Infinite is doing, don't support it. Boycott the game, you know? And just remember, if you're someone that doesn't see an issue with this, anybody in general, if you're someone that's going to buy Halo Infinite, you're going to support this game, you're going to purchase it, and you're going to buy it despite the controversies, just remember this. You are sending the message to 343 and every other company in the industry that this is okay to do, and that do more of this. And don't be surprised if you see more of this shit happen because you're supporting it. So, which side are you going to take? Are you going to boycott this game and send the message that you don't want this in the industry, or are you going to buy it? And like I said, I can't control people. You know, I can't stop people from doing what they're doing. I wish I could, so I can change the shit in the industry. But that's my message right there. If you support Halo Infinite, you're telling the entire industry to do more of this. But if you boycott this game, it sends the message not to do this. Because like I said, and I'll say it again, patches, DLC, microtransactions are unacceptable because they make video games incomplete and broken for years to come. And future generations will not be able to get complete experiences like we did growing up. And this isn't about ranting for views. This isn't about just complaining to complain. The only reason I'm making this video is because I care about gaming and the gaming industry itself. And I want it to be treated like an art form. And I want future generations after us to be able to get complete experiences like we did growing up. That's the whole point here, you know? So yeah, I hope everyone got my message. You know, that's all I really got to say about it.